Hi, everybody. This is Rick, and this is Astral Club. I have a very special guest with me today on this podcast. It's my daughter Rose, who is a physician's assistant. And she probably knows almost as much as I do about astral projection because she's had to hear the stories her whole life. So she has brought several of her astral projection experiences with her, and we're going to let her read these. I think you might find them interesting, and then we'll talk back and forth and ask some questions and just see where this podcast takes us. So without further ado, Rose.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, so hi, nice to meet you all. I definitely have heard quite a few stories, but I definitely wouldn't say I know as much as my dad, that's for sure. He has a lot more experience, and that's an understatement. So first off, I guess we can sort of talk about my first experience astral projecting.
Yes. And I your first one, I think you really don't remember too much anymore because you were just a little girl and you asked me to take you out of your body, which I did. We went flying over the neighborhood, and then we went on a little adventure. But the next morning, all you recalled, and this is when you were 5 or 6, was flying over some trees. Unfortunately, now I don't even think you remember that, do you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple experiences when you were a little bit older, when you could actually, when you have some memory, and you've actually written down some of them here. So why don't you share them with us? So I think they're pretty good experiences, and they're indicative of someone who is newer at astral projecting.
Right, which I think is a really interesting perspective that perhaps people don't ordinarily see when they're learning from professionals. So my first experience that I recall actually wasn't recorded down. I was 10 years old, and I remember trying multiple times, based on what my dad had taught me, to try to have these experiences. So I would train myself and try to remember my dreams so that way I could recognize when I was having a dream, and therefore I could turn into a lucid dream and then could cause myself to sort of have this falling experience to turn it into an astral projection.
So your favorite way of astral projecting, and everybody's different, is you like to astral project out of a lucid dream, right?
Yes.
And just for everybody, maybe there's some people who are new here, a lucid dream is different from a normal dream because in a lucid dream, you are aware that you're dreaming. And within that lucid dream, you are the total master of the environment. You can change anything you want. You can change your location. You can change the scenery. You have complete control. But it also is a good way to astral project from. So,
correct. So actually, for example, I've had a few lucid dreams where I will be in a backyard and all of a sudden I will decide that I want there to be a huge tsunami, and I can make that happen at will. It's not something that exists in a real physical universe, but it is solely within my dream. So it sort of starts there. I was in a lucid dream at that point, and I remember trying to make myself fall. And I tried multiple times without success, but this one day was special. So I had that falling sensation, and all of a sudden, I remember it being almost in a grayscale, and I was staring at my own body as a 10-year-old child. And interestingly enough, I turned over my right shoulder, and my father was there.
yes.
Do you remember that?
Yes, I do. I was there only briefly, though.
It blows my mind at the timing that you had, though. How did you know?
You know what? I was traveling at the time, and I just had a feeling that you were out of your body. I guess we have a connection, and so I popped by just to see how you were doing. I was really just checking to see if you were frightened or disturbed, and you look pretty calm to me. So I really just decided to go on my own projection from there.
Oh, okay.
Because you looked like you were fine.
So I was more or less just taking in the scene. I was I was in awe of the fact that I was staring at my own body. So I looked over my shoulder. I'd seen my father. I looked back at myself. And then I glanced back over my shoulder again, and he was gone. And then at that point, my vision faded. And then I woke up again in my body in the morning. So that was my first experience.
The first one, that you certainly recall.
That I recall, correct.
And that was age 10.
That was at 10.
Okay.
So I had smaller experiences that weren't really worth mentioning after that point. But of course, I wasn't able to do this unless I was really training myself for a period of time. So I didn't start again until after I'd graduated from graduate school. And this was around age 26, where I started journaling some of my experiences. So the first time that I had an experience when I was 26, I wrote down. And I can read some of these stories for you here. And of course, Dad, if you have anything to add, you can always stop me midway through and we can discuss something if there's anything important to note.
No, please do. I think everybody would like to hear it.
Okay. So this was at 26. It was early morning. I could tell by the light that was shining against my closed eyes. I had just awoken gently from a dream and become fully aware that I had done so. I was disappointed that another night had passed without resulting in a lucid dream, allowing me the opportunity to transition into an astral projection the way I'd only once had as a child. I decided to try something new. What did I have to lose? In an early morning, semi-conscious state, I visualized or sensed the falling experience. I willed it, though I doubted anything would come of it. I had figured I was too awake for that, but suddenly the falling intensified and I knew I had done it. My vision was blurry and gray. It was as if my eyes were glued shut and my physical body was frequently experiencing, like when you have a dehydrated morning when your eyes are kind of glued shut. However, there were small cracks through my lids in which I could see pieces. From that instant, I had known that I had accomplished my goal, and I ran as far away from my physical body as I possibly could, which is, of course, different from my first experience. I knew what I was doing at this point, right, more or less, at least in theory. I knew the further I got away, the longer I had in the astral. I made it down the stairs and outside, seeing only parts of my journey thus far. It kind of happened quite quickly.
Right.
I was doing what I had rehearsed in my mind over the past 3 days, and I'd once again began to attempt since childhood.
Now, let me stop you there because I want to discuss a couple things real quick that a lot of people have asked questions about astral vision. And there's some quirks of astral vision there that you've mentioned that I want to talk about. When you first left your body, what was your vision like? It sounded like it was partial. You weren't seeing.
It was like seeing in grayscale. If you turn the TV to grayscale, and
right,
with slightly less light as well,
okay,
so it's a little bit hard to make out the figures that you see.
Okay, and that when I hear that happens quite often, very soon after an astral projection, when you're still in the lower astral, very close to the physical body. Not to mention, if you think about it, there's this quote from The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, when Neo is on the operating table on Morpheus's ship. He asked Morpheus why his eyes hurt, his physical eyes.
Oh yeah.
And Morpheus said, because you've never used them before. Because he'd always been in this weird hooked into the Matrix type of thing. He wasn't using his real eyes.
Oh my
gosh. Perhaps you haven't used your astral eyes before. So they're adjusting, if you will. Starting out shaky, maybe blotchy, grayscale, and only then gradually improving and actually then doing better.
That's a good analogy. As you'll see, it changed pretty quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
But who knows? Maybe it might be.
Yeah, that's
coming out of the
something
lower.
I've asked a lot of people have asked me about quite a bit, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that, because some people they're not sure, they're questioning whether that was right or whether that was a real experience because they didn't have full vision and it was strange to them. And So,
But the difference is that you know. I wrote "new" in all caps.
Right.
You know when you're astral projecting.
and it
it's
feels
different.
that's a great point. Another question that I've gotten is how do you know it's not just a dream? Because it feels different. I mean, we've all had regular dreams. Many of us have had lucid dreams, and you certainly have had lucid dreams.
Right.
But even in a lucid dream, even though you're aware you're dreaming, but it feels like a dream. When you astral project, it feels real. I mean, it feels like physical reality from the standpoint of how real it is.
And another way I can describe it is that in a dream, logic doesn't quite line up.
Right.
When I'm in an astral projection, I think the way I do when I'm conscious.
Right.
There's no difference.
Okay. Okay, good.
All right.
Please begin.
All right. So I made it outside to the lawn and I knew I wanted to fly. My eyes fully opened and I was in the sky soaring. The sky was such a pure form of blue that I had ever seen. I looked down below and I saw bright green rolling hills. I lowered my altitude and noticed houses with beautiful, vibrant colors along luscious grassland. The feeling was insurmountable. I was overwhelmed with awe and excitement at the energy I felt, the colors and the beauty I witnessed, the realization that I'd finally done it, and the vast and endless opportunity that was presented to me. I considered what else I could do, figuring it could have taken me many attempts to come as far as I already had. I decided to fly through the clouds. I flew through one and felt a burst of excitement. A small underlying precursor to the fear developed, but I quickly willed it away, trying to prolong the experience and remain logical. I flew through another cloud and began pushing the limits. What else could I do? I could travel through time, I could visit my father. However, I thought to myself, perhaps it would be best if I just enjoy this flying experience for my first big astral adventure. I would have plenty more opportunities in the future, and I continued to bask in the absolute breathtaking, exhilarating experience, and I continued to fly. Suddenly, as quickly as I had come, my vision blackened, and I opened my eyes and saw the bedroom around me. I had returned, I was awake and full of energy, which flying through the clouds, of course,
Yes.
I would have that energy.
Yes, flying through the clouds is one of my favorite things to do too. Many times you can gain some electric energy from them. You feel very invigorated.
It's like
when
having
you're
a
back.
really great night's sleep.
Yeah.
A very full,
Yeah.
rested night's sleep.
Yeah. So I mean that sounds pretty phenomenal. And you were 26.
Yes.
Right when that happened. Okay.
So my next experience is actually a different way of going about starting to astral project. So before I had mentioned that I started off in a lucid dream.
Yes.
This way was slightly different. Actually, I think I started off in a lucid dream my first experience as a child.
Okay.
This one in particular, I tried a different way.
Oh,
Okay, so I was dreaming and then I became aware. I attempted to reach out and fall sideways off the bed. This time it was easy. I opened my eyes and I saw my sleeping self hanging more towards the edge of the bed. I recall a bright blue, which I thought was a shirt, but now realized it could have been my bedsheet.
And so were you trying the rollout method here?
Yes, so I rolled out sideways.
Okay.
Sometimes I pictured jumping off a cliff. This time I was slightly awake and I figured I would just roll. And that was the first time I had tried that.
Okay.
At that particular time, that was easy, which surprised me.
Yeah, and the rollout method was actually the method I used most often as a child. Because as a child, I'd actually rolled out of my bed physically a couple of times.
And I think that's how I knew to try it, because you had told me those stories. So realizing again the little time that I had, I darted towards the stairs. Opening my eyes midway, I could see the stairs and the back door as it exists. Doing this to help my later self determine the validity of the experience. I ended up in the backyard between my house and the garage, and it looked slightly darkened like early morning sky, but I took off the fly. I wondered why the colors weren't as bright as I knew they should be, like the other experience I'd mentioned. However, that did change. But I flew low to the ground near the trees, and I wished to go higher and faster at times with what seemed to be limited success, but nevertheless I traveled. I quarreled with myself, trying to determine once again what to do at the time. Realizing I didn't have a specific visual or place in my mind, the places I wanted to go didn't really appear. I wasn't sure why, but my last 2 wishes weren't successful, but I tried to advance myself through the years by traveling quickly, not quite gaining enough speed. However, I had thought at the time maybe I would progress to start off slowly, maybe 5 years, but how would I recognize the passage of 5 small years when looking back? Therefore, the outcome of that experiment is undetermined. I continued to fly low when I came across my reason for doubting this experience, but later discussed it with you to find the reasoning, what it was. It appears as if I'd encountered a man against a tree. So what had happened was I was flying above the trees, and then I came down almost perpendicular, straight down in front of this man. And he was wearing this farmer's outfit, overalls. And
You told me the clothes look like old type.
clothes. Yes, maybe late 1800s, I would say.
Okay.
So I flew up to him, and his face changed to that of awe and fear. I wondered how he could see me in this present time, and I had no idea where I was. I flew away, noticing the bright green trees and the light of the morning, and then I woke up. But that was the interesting part of this astral projection, was encountering other beings.
And that was your first. From what you've written there, it sounds to me like you were struggling to get out of the lower astral.
Because of the struggle with, it was dark, but then it was
So you were kind of maybe running in and out there, and this guy, he could have been some sort of an earthbound spirit, maybe some old farmer stuck who didn't want to leave his farm, let's say, and perhaps you saw him in the lower, one of the part of the lower astral, and I know when I have landed from flying in the lower astral, and other beings have seen me, they've been frightened as well.
Yeah.
Because these beings in the lower astral, they're not aware that you can fly. So it
was almost as if he didn't realize he was anywhere else but his life he had always known.
Right, and that's one of the problems with people who are earthbound. They tend to have been individuals who just were very limited in their intellect. They didn't think about any other realities. It was all just my farm, that's it. And it's possible, from what I've seen, to build like your own little wall, your own little hell, if you will.
Oh, jeez.
Where and that the hell sounds like it's suffering. It doesn't need to be. It just needs to be something where you have surrounded yourself with what you want to see. You want to stay on your farm, and you're not going to leave, and you're just going to be stubborn. And no one can force you, from what I've seen, out of that lower astral, if that's where you wish to be. You can be helped out. And I remember in an apartment building that I was in that had been renovated from, it used to be a factory, and before it was a factory, it was an abandoned building, and drug addicts would go there in the 60s and shoot up.
Oh, wow.
And this particular woman who I encountered in this apartment had died there from a drug overdose. She actually approached me, which is unusual. And when I see that, it tells me that they're open, they're ready, they want to move on, they're seeking help. It's just like you can't help somebody who's an alcoholic if they don't want to be helped, or if they don't believe they have a problem. They have to believe they have a problem. They have to want to be helped, and it's the same thing. In the lower astral too. So when she approached me, I knew she wanted help, and that I could help her, and I did. But certainly finding an astral character like that is not unusual.
Right, and at the time I didn't know that's what it was.
Right.
I was so confused as to what year am I in that I have stumbled upon this person here who's dressed this way when I wasn't intending to.
Yeah.
But
traveling in time can be a little bit more complex.
Oh yeah.
Than just traveling in the here now. I mean, listen, traveling in the astral, that's still pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Believe me, those were some perfectly good astral experiences, and I'm sure there's folks listening here that will be inspired by that, and that they'll have some of their own experiences. Look, 90% of my experiences aren't really fancy. I'm not visiting alien worlds or going millions of years into the future. I'm just flying around the earth, or I'm flying to the clouds, or I'm just traveling, seeing what my parents are up to. Things like that. That's not fancy, but it's by far more, more average projections that happen more often than the really fancy ones. Well, thank you, Rose.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad we had this opportunity to do this together.
Yeah.
And if you like this podcast, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, subscribe and hit that bell so that you'll be notified every time a new podcast is posted. And I want to thank everyone for visiting the Astral Club, and I will see you on the Astral.